The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host and or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of the host and or Paranormal Buzz Radio and or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is prohibited. Paranormal Buzz Radio will not be held responsible for you holding your knees, crying, and rocking in a corner in a puddle of your own urine, or being beheaded by a group of children in a cornfield. In fact, if you come across a group of children in a cornfield, we promise to make fun of you as you run away screaming in terror. Listener discretion is advised.
Paranormal 5 is bringing you Para Peeps New England to help showcase some of the best in the paranormal and unexplained in the area. Their goal? To show the strength of paranormal unity by giving everyone in the field a voice. Join them as they discuss everything from haunted locations, aliens, metaphysical, cryptids, and much, much more. So sit back, enjoy the show, and as always, thank you for listening.
Good evening once again, everybody, and welcome to episode number 4 of Para Peeps New England. My name is Rich.
And I'm Missy.
And we are of Paranormal 5, a Maine-based paranormal family. So we are super excited for tonight's show, but before we introduce tonight's guest, I want to just start off by saying thank you again for everyone who's turned in. And again, this is our 4th time around doing these episodes. We've gotten some good feedback. Wanted to thank Tom Spitaleri, who was our guest last month. We super appreciate you coming on and everyone that checked out that podcast for us. So tonight we're super excited. We want to introduce to you guys a gentleman named Matt Warner. Matt was born and raised down in the Bridgewater Triangle area down in Massachusetts, which probably explains a lot of his early love for the paranormal, being from that area. And with his own personal experience as a child, combined with the love for horror movies, Matt was drawn to learn more of the paranormal overall. He was able to find avenues to explore through different ghost hunting television shows, and eventually being able to go out hunting for himself. And Matt has now been to many well-known locations. He's been able to work to develop his own technique using modern-day equipment and relying on his own instinctual abilities as well. So, Matt, we just wanted to say thank you, Matt, for joining us tonight. And how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Oh, we're doing good, man. We're doing good.
Doing very good. So first question, Matt, that we wanted to ask is so obviously from your quick bio that Richie just read that you were interested in the paranormal at a young age. Now, was there any one event or one experience that kind of really stuck out in your childhood, or something major that stuck out in your childhood?
So in my childhood, when I was younger, I didn't have any necessarily earth-shattering paranormal experiences. I was always drawn to horror movies, so that's kind of where it all started. And obviously, Ghostbusters and things like that. Always liked horror. My grandparents lived next door, and their house was haunted. I believe it was my great-grandmother because she passed in the house, but I never had any experiences, but they would always tell me stories, and we just refer to the ghost as Casper.
Yeah.
So there's never any real experiences there. I remember when I was younger at my own house, waking up one night, and behind my door I saw like a shadow off the ground but up in the corner of the door. And it's one of those things that you kind of brush off because you want to just think it's not there. So to this day, I don't know if it was spiritual, if it was just my eyes. So I don't really claim that to be as much, but as I got older and my love of horror kept growing and growing, then they started coming out with the TV shows like Unsolved Mysteries and Sightings. And Unsolved Mysteries was great around Halloween because they'd always do that creepy Halloween vibe one with the ghosts and stuff that they never talked about. And those shows made me realize that there was more to it than we knew. And, for the kids watching, we didn't have the internet, so we weren't exposed to it. We had to actually go on our bikes to libraries and things and, and research and do all that stuff.
Imagine that.
So, I know. Imagine how.
Right. Imagine. It was so tough growing up, man. I'm telling you.
Finding a payphone to get a ride home, all this stuff. There's so many things you kids have no idea.
I know. They got nothing. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say real quick, when you had mentioned growing up and it sadly living the house next to you being haunted. So, what was kind of your family like? Just to kind of give some of your background, was it something that you guys talked? I know you said you called the ghost Caspers, but was it something that was? Were you, as a kid, were you told just that it was made up, that it's there's no such thing, or did your family kind of embrace the idea of the afterlife?
My family always embraced it.
They did.
They never shied away from it because it wasn't something that I was scared of. I wasn't. Oh, I don't want to go to Nana's house today because the ghost is going to get me. It was just like, oh, Nana was telling me that they heard footsteps and this and that. And they're like,
Nice.
it's probably just Casper, and it was just accepted. It was never a scary place. I was never scared to go to her house or anything like that. And I wish I had had an experience there, but I never did. But as I had gotten a little bit older and was digging into more of the research, then shows like Ghost Hunters came out.
Sure.
It's like, whoa, you can do things now. Like there's devices and whatnot. So I was getting books and all that kind of stuff and researching local legends and going around anywhere that I could get to and looking into it and doing, unbeknownst to me, I was investigating at that point in time.
Yeah.
It just wasn't what we know it as today. So
Sure, doing the research.
There's always people that, when you say you've been investigating for 20 plus years, like, oh, that's a load of shit. It's like, well, I may not have had a suitcase full of equipment, but I've always been investigating.
Exactly. You've been curious,
Exactly.
right? You've always been looking for answers.
You've always been researching and going to the library, getting those books, checking them out. No, I'm the same way. Yep.
I tell a lot too, and I've done some of these various shows, and of course they always ask you where you got your start, and for me it was the same thing. Like I had no idea about paranormal. I knew that I was infatuated with death and the afterlife, and I knew as a kid that I couldn't accept the fact that we just are here one day and gone the next, so it led to questions. And so, yeah, absolutely. So from that young age, you develop those questions, and then you just don't realize yet that there's ways to get those answers.
Exactly. And that exposure is those TV shows that aha light bulb moments, like, all right, I'm not the only weirdo on the block.
Definitely.
And I didn't have any friends that were into this growing up, so I was, the lone wolf doing the things on my own. And
yeah.
There's a road near my where I grew up, about 20 minutes away, and that's where I had that moment where I said, all right, there's something going on and I need to figure it out. But this road, it runs through Native American reservation land, which you guys are very well aware of being in New England. We have that everywhere. So the road itself is about a mile long. The first half of the road you drive through, and it's this really affluent neighborhood, very rich homes. The second half is just a narrow 1.5 lane wooded road cut through from one lane to the next. And rumor has it that you experience everything paranormal down there, kind of Bridgewater Triangle-ish. UFOs, Bigfoots, Thunderbirds, giant Native Americans, totems, everything. We used to drive up and down this road, bored teenagers, with nothing to do. I must have driven up and down the road 100 times. The one night that changed my life, my friend and I were driving down. It was in January. It was very warm for January. No precipitation on the ground, no snow on the ground, anything. It was probably in the low 50s. And my buddy was chicken shit anyways. He was one of those people, didn't really like it, but he had nothing better to do than hang out with me. So we were driving down there this night, and I said, hey, I think I'm gonna stop in the middle of the road tonight and then see what happens. He's like, dude, don't do that. Don't do that. I said, yeah, no problem, buddy. I won't do that to you. Of course I'm gonna do that.
Of course you did.
So we're driving down the road, and we get through the neighborhood part, and what we would do is we would drive to the end, turn around, and then loop back through to get, the double dose. So we had the windows down in my truck, we're driving through, and it feels different. It feels like a little, I don't want to say heavier, because I didn't understand all that at that point in time, but it just felt different than other nights. So we get to the end of the road, we turn around, and he already knows I'm going to do this to him. He's already got this in his head that I'm going to screw with him.
Yeah.
So we get about halfway point of the abandoned part of this road, and I slowly put my foot on the pedal. He looks over. He's like, dude, what are you doing? I said, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. I put my foot on the pedal. I stop the truck. I turn the lights off. No sooner do I turn the lights off, at the hood of my truck, 2 hands. I see the arms, white dress, and I get to about the shoulders. I absolutely bug out. I flip the lights on. He starts bugging out. I hit the accelerator, and the truck won't move.
Wow.
The wheels are spinning, and the truck won't move, as if this being is holding my truck. And it seems like an eternity. It was probably seconds.
Sure.
But all of a sudden, it releases, but it doesn't go forward. The truck goes to an angle, like as if it was just shoved aside. And now the truck's going about 60 miles an hour, and I'm trying to pull the wheel. The truck is all over the place. My buddy's screaming at me, dude, don't do this. And I'm looking at him, I can't control this. At the last second, I was able to pull the wheel back to the right and get onto the road before hitting this massive old tree. And I went through that neighborhood at 60, 70 miles per hour to get the hell out of there. Got to the main road with his cars and people and life.
Sure.
And we pulled
Civilization.
pulled over, and I'm like really bugging out. And I look over at him. This kid's a ginger, anyways. He was whiter than usual. He was ghostly white. And I said, "What did you see?" And he said, "I saw a woman in a white dress standing right in front of your truck with her hands on the hood." And I said, "That is exactly what I saw." So we saw the same exact thing without.
That's awesome.
Cross promoting it, and he's never been down that road since. I didn't go down there again for 5 years. I mean, that changed my whole perspective on all the paranormal, because I knew at that moment there is definitely something else out there.
Yeah. Now, by chance, were you able to find, looking back now, have you been able to come across anything that may have led to why you had that experience out there, as far as any history of that road or that area?
There's no written history of anything like that, of a woman in white. That was one of those urban legends.
Sure, sure.
Like the hitchhikers on Route 44.
Yeah,
It's just, you never know where they come from. There's no written history on any of it.
Wow.
It was a one-paragraph thing, and it was in like a weird New England book. It was just a one little paragraph blurb about this road, and I was like, oh, that's close. I'll go check it out.
Yeah.
It turned out to be the thing that got me to where I am now.
Wow.
That is really crazy.
Yeah, and share that experience too. I mean, that's so crucial, because I feel like there's so many times where even when you have two full-on believers in a room and one person's telling of their personal experience, it's to be able to capture it with somebody else, to have that validate it for yourself, to be able to validate the story when you're sharing it with somebody else. I mean, that's huge. So that's awesome to share that. Yeah. Awesome. So real quick, as far as kind of bringing you back to kind of what got you into everything, and I think this is kind of a question that we like to ask everybody, is you talked about, again, movies really being a big influence for you when you were younger. So if you had to give me your top scary movies, what would they be?
My favorite horror movie is Original Texas Chainsaw.
Yes. Awesome.
And it's followed as closely as can be by the original Halloween. Those two are my go-tos.
Yeah, 1 and 1A.
I love those. I love the remake Night of the Living Dead.
Nice. Nice.
Session 9 is way up there for me. 13 Ghosts remake is up there for me.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a really good one.
I love the original one too. I know it's so cheesy, but it's a good one.
See, I can't really get into the stuff from the 50s and 60s. It just doesn't stick with me.
Yeah.
And I love the first Conjuring. The first Conjuring that's like the perfect haunted house movie in my opinion.
Nice. Yeah, that is a fun one too.
We've all been there, so it's even cooler.
Yeah, right, exactly. we more recently, we've been there.
Yep. No, it's a good one. So, next question is how you talked about how you are a skeptical believer. Now, what does that mean to you? Like going in, being a healthy skeptic, and when you do an investigation, like what does that mean to you?
So I'm like Buzz Killington. I love debunking everyone's stuff.
I love that. I appreciate that.
I have to so in terms of like being a skeptical believer, for me, I know what I've experienced. Mm-hmm. I don't need to prove it to you guys or anybody else. That's coming with me to the grave. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if you guys had your experiences, so you have to prove yourselves to me.
Right.
That's how I look at things. I trust a lot of people, but I trust less than I actually do trust, because there's so many people out there just to sensationalize things to make money and
of course
and get notoriety and all these things, and that's not my style. So that also lends to me really wanting to debunk everything.
Yeah.
And I am a buzzkill on events. Some people are like, man, you suck. I was like, but it wasn't paranormal, dude. Like it wasn't, plain and simple. You know?
And I think that's important. I definitely think that it because I'm right there with you. I've always kind of considered myself the same, where I will gladly look for 10 reasons as to why it is not paranormal, and then if I'm left with nothing and no examples, no actual truth behind it, then okay, now we might have something. And I think depending on the situation. So, if you're going in to help somebody, I mean, you don't want to just feed into, not everything's a demon. You know what I mean? Not everything's gonna come out and get you, but and so if it depends on if you're going to maybe a well-known place and you're going because you want to experience something, maybe so. But if you're going to help a family or help somebody in need or try to find answers for somebody, I mean, you want to steer them in the right direction. So having that healthy level of skepticism, I think it helps keep you grounded. Mm-hmm. It helps you keep you here in reality, and it just just lends more credibility to when you can't explain something.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and credibility. You said it right you hit the nail on the head. I strive for that. I don't want people looking at me like I'm some sort of phony clown. Like right. I strive to be the realest person out there, because the field is full of phonies and fakes. We know that.
Definitely.
Yes.
And so another thing that, coming across in your bio, and this is interesting to me because Missy and I, we kind of have two separate approaches into the paranormal, where Missy definitely relies more on intuition, relies more on just being that empathic, being just having those natural gifts and really honing them in, where I also like to use more of the scientific methods. I like to use more of the tools. I like to have, hard evidence. I can see it, I can feel it, I can touch it, I can smell it. So you describe as being obviously a skeptical believer, but also as somebody who is developing and learning to trust their intuition, as far as being, kind of empathic, maybe have a little bit of medium in you as well. So how do you balance the two of being both a skeptic, but also being able to trust your intuition?
That is going to be the learning experience and curve for the rest of my life, because I don't understand it. I've been an empath for a really long time. I miss not caring, because empathy kills me.
Yeah.
It does.
I wish when I was younger, I was that person. I don't care.
Yeah.
And now I care so much I can't think sometimes. I've always been able to sense energy and things like that, and I forget which Claire that is. There's too many Claires out there, but I've always been able to do that. Walk into a room kind of like a human barometer and tell something's off.
Sure.
And I've been told numerous times by numerous psychics over the past few years that I am a psychic medium. I don't really tout it as much because I don't understand it. I'm not going to be able to show up and help you locate your lost wallet or any of that stuff, or tell you
Right.
who's in the corner, smoking a pipe. That's not how it works for me. So last year I had my first actual psychic experience where I saw physical form. And now that's only happened that one time, but I do all the time now see energy. I see it in different colored orbs, different flashes of light. I see more shadow figures than I used to. And I think a part of it is last year my friend Kenna, she did a lot of Reiki and spirit work on me and scrubbed all this negativity that had been had on me for a really long time, and it helped me open up. And I kind of explained to her, I said, I don't want to see dead people. I'm not really prepared for all that crap. I like my life the way it is. But more and more things are coming through the cracks, and I'm starting to be able to focus it more on investigations. So it's a very slow process, mainly because I'm not allowing it to happen quick, because I'm not ready for it.
Sure, yeah. And I think, too, as far as, like you said, bringing it into your investigations, we always refer to it as just having more tools in the toolbox. So even from, the intuitive side and using what somebody is picking up to then validate what you might get with something with your tools, or vice versa, it just gives, rather than looking at those as two separate styles, or you're right, I'm wrong, your method's right, my method's right, it's, let's combine our findings and see if we can find a common between the two of them, and it helps to validate those experiences. And it's to be able to do that within yourself, I think, is awesome too, to go off your instinct, but then have that ability to really ground yourself from the skeptical side and say, okay, I'm not going to let my intuition run wild right now, and I'm going to use it to really hone in and use it to focus on it and get the right information out of it. Awesome.
So what is your favorite go-to tool when you are investigating? Is there anything that you kind of stay away from, or are there tools that you typically always, that's your go-to?
So what I've done for myself the past year and a half now is gone out and investigated with as many different groups and people and places as I possibly can, and it's helped me experience so much more equipment and realize what I do and don't want. Like most of us, we all have too much stuff that we never use.
Yeah.
Correct.
I used to love the Ovilus. I'll never use one again. I find there's way too much possibilities with it.
Sure.
And I don't trust or use apps because of the same thing. I feel like those can be programmed to do whatever the programmer wants.
Right.
Yeah.
So I disregard those. Do they have their place? If you're doing an event with people that like the bells and whistles from TV, you need that stuff.
Right.
So they do. I don't like those. I don't use anything like that. I'm getting used to using the spirit boxes a little bit more. I still don't love them because same thing. The power of suggestion. If we're in a room and it's just white noise and you say, "Oh, did you hear that? It said demon." We're all going to think it said it because you suggested it.
Right.
So Estes method I like. When I go out, I do a lot of Estes method, but with my team and with other teams, because I feel it takes out that probability.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You're just in the headphones. It's just you and the words, and you don't know what's going on. So I've been doing more than that, but my go-to lately, since I've been more in tune with my intuitions, is dowsing rods.
Oh, okay, awesome.
And I love my dowsing rods. They never used to work. They didn't, and now I can walk in somewhere, like in this room, I got all my haunted stuff all over. Like, I can talk to these things anytime I want, and they'll point exactly where they are, and I fully believe in them. Now, they're not the most exciting things for people to watch,
right?
But it's not about that for me always either. So.
And I wonder too, and so you had made a good point there where you say that you love them, but they never used to work for you. And so do you feel that learning to develop and trust more of your intuition, do you think that was a skeptical side of you that wouldn't allow them to work for you, and that now that you're learning to trust your intuition more, it's allowing your rods to work better for you?
I think that was a big part of it, and I also think that whatever was scrubbed for me and whatever walls came down, the spirits now see me as that medium beacon that they can communicate through.
Definitely.
So I think it opened up and made it easier for them. Before, I was just putting up a shield, don't come near me.
Yeah.
And now I'm open, and I open myself up wide when I walk into a place. I've gotten better about protecting myself, which is good. I don't take anything home anymore. But now, since I've gone through all that, those rods work great pretty much everywhere I am, as long as the spirits are around.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh,
Awesome.
we definitely have like a variety of different things. Like I love the dowsing rods and using the pendulum, like kind of doing the metaphysical, like old school stuff. But I also love like the tech, like the K2's voice recorders. We're not super big on the spirit box, but definitely I agree with the Estes method. It's I feel like that's the best way, or probably the only way that you should really use it if you're trying to.
We had a little get together
evidence
the other night, and we were talking about the Estes method, and I kind of, my thoughts behind that were, I like the idea of, so when you're listening to a spirit box, obviously, I mean, it's so hard to pick out the actual radio frequency versus something else, but I think that repetitive noise and almost that aggressive white noise can almost put you in like a meditative state. And I think that in that state, if you're able to then receive message, and then that's what comes out. So not even necessarily that you're listening for the word to come through the speaker itself, but you're more just getting your mindset, you're putting yourself in that trance, you're blocking out all the exterior, and and then it allows a message to come through. And then if you can utilize that with somebody asking the questions and they can't hear them, I feel like that's where you might get your evidence. Because again, we have a love-hate relationship with the spirit box too, and in some cases I find it to be so aggressive. If you're not doing the Estes method, I mean, you're in this quiet, silent room and you've got this just obnoxious speaker that's going nuts.
I completely agree. And I find for myself, when I'm doing it, I do trance out. I'm gone.
Oh, yeah.
I've had, I don't want to call it an out-of-body experience, but I see myself from up above, and I'm not there. And I have teammates try to get me out of it, and I'm not myself. And we just did one last weekend at Wilson Castle, and it worked out really, really well. But same thing, I know I'm also able to be hypnotized, so I think in the similar vein, listening to that long enough, it is like a state of hypnosis.
Yeah.
And you are just laser focused. And once I get into that zone, I'm good. I need to be in there, though, because otherwise I don't hear words.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I agree.
And I also feel too, like when it comes to tools, because like you said, I feel like some of the newer stuff and the bigger stuff, it's like you said, it's great for when you're hosting like an event. Like we put on an event a couple months ago over at Parsonsfield Seminary up here in Maine, and we had about 30 or so people, and that's when like the spirit boxes and some of these different cameras are great, but I still like just kind of bringing it back to the basics. I love the recorders. I like using the simple K2s, but really I would say a recorder to capture audio, and then some sort of a video feed. Stuff that you can't. It's harder to question. When you have that stuff, there's less room for interpretation, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I've had a lot of luck lately with the EDI Plus,
Yep.
corroborating things that I've been working with. Like I was at Madison Seminary back in January. And we're in this room in Madison, Sarah's room, and this room creeps me out anyways. But I was sitting in a chair doing the rods, and I could feel the cold air and the energy circulating. And I said to my buddy Steve, I said, it's cold here, and he put his hand, he could feel it. Brought the EDI over, and as it circled around me, it lit up to let you know the cold spot was there.
Oh,
and it corroborated it perfectly. And we're just sitting there like, holy shit, like this is the real deal.
Yeah.
So I've had good luck with that. And that was another one I held out on because it was on TV. So how great could it be?
Right.
I'm also not a scientific data kind of person. I'm old school with the tech. I don't like the tech, but this one I have found it's got a nice spot in my toolbox.
Awesome.
That's super exciting. So you had mentioned while you were talking about using your dowsing rods and how you speak with some of your haunted items or some of the haunted items in your collection. So what do you have, like haunted, or what haunted items do you have? Or I'm just kind of mumbling and going all over the place.
I know where you're going. So
I'm glad you know what I'm getting at.
I have a couple dozen haunted items.
Okay.
A lot of stuff people now send to me because they know I want that stuff.
Sure.
So I've got, to my left, I've got the 5 supposedly haunted Ouija boards. One of them is wrapped up in a sheet with all these symbols on it because a lady said it's been in storage for 10 years. I had a storage unit just for that, and I was like, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Still sleep like a baby. Nothing's happening. I have an old reel-to-reel player that I got just recently in Salem from an old funeral home in Salem. 2 days after I brought that home, I was setting up podcasts, and I was standing next to it, and I heard the lid slam shut, but it was already shut.
Oh, wow.
And I just looked down, and I said, oh, really? So you are haunted. I like that. That's good. Welcome. I got that over here. I've got a few haunted dolls. I've got one that is the star of my collection, Ameline, and we got her name through, we used the obelisk with her and a bunch of other pieces of devices, and that name came through. She was left in the back seat of a friend's truck, and he's not sure when it was put there, but he came out one day and saw this creepy doll in the back of his truck. She's the doll itself was a grannykin, so they made these in the 50s to look like grandmothers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when she was new, she looked like Mrs. Howell from Gilligan's Island, all done up. But now she's got like a rusted, wonky eye, and she's grimy, and her hair's all matted. She's also got an actual noose around her neck, like scaled to her, but noose, like a real slipknot noose.
Really?
Yeah.
And he had no idea what it was doing there, and he's like, I know you are into this stuff, and I was like, I'll take it. And he said, well, let me talk to my wife, and I didn't hear anything for about a month, and he called me one day, and he said, if you want this, you have to come get it right now, because I have to burn it otherwise. So what's going on? And he said, well, my mother-in-law passed away, my best friend committed suicide, the whole family's fighting, and everything's happened since I've had this doll in my possession. So I'll come get it. So I go to meet him. He hadn't taken it out of his truck. I picked it up. I was like, oh, okay. Saged his whole truck for him to make him feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Brought it home, didn't think much of it. Now, anytime I bring something, I like to call them enchanted because I feel like haunted is automatically scary.
I like that, yeah.
So anytime I bring something home, I bring it home. And I don't do anything with it. I don't cleanse it, none of that stuff until I do a Facebook Live reveal for everybody to see. And then we do readings. And so it was in the house for a couple days. And the whole time I was in the house, I didn't feel well. I was more on edge than usual, just down. And I started thinking, I think it's this doll. So wound up going Facebook Live one night, doing all kinds of readings. I've got psychics from all across the country that were watching at the time. And via the obelisk, we got Ameline, which is a French word for hard worker, and that's what I've taken as her name, New Orleans, and water. So now I'm thinking, oh yeah, French word, New Orleans, and water. I'm instantly thinking voodoo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And one of the psychics messaged me and said that noose is acting as a binding curse. There's something attached to that doll. That noose is holding it on. So I said, should I take it off? And she said, no, don't ever take the noose off. So the noose stays on.
Yep.
The doll is there. And she said, you're doing the right thing by giving it attention because that's what it wants. Mm-hmm. So it sits on the best shelf, watching TV with me. It stays quiet. I've had a few experiences. I bring her to conventions because people like that. It's not Annabelle, so I'm not like, you can't touch it. Like, you can touch it all you want, just not my problem if something happens,
Right.
Yeah.
People don't want to touch it. There are people that are just like, I don't want anything to do with it. And then there's
our daughters touched it.
It's got its own life, and I brought it to Parafest, Maine last year, and my daughter and I were sitting in Portland eating pizza, and I got a message from a psychic friend of mine whom I've never met, and she said, hey, you've got a real dark energy standing next to you. I said, oh, that's great. I'm just trying to have some pizza. And I said, what does it look like? She said, well, it's an older woman, and she's upset. And she's like, do you have something with you? I said, well, I got something in the Jeep, and I sent her a picture. She goes, that's it. She goes, you need to get rid of it. And I said, never happened. She's like, well, if it was up to me, I'd tell you to get rid of it, but I know you're not gonna, but you need to be careful. I said, oh, she's out enjoying life, and it's all good. When I got home, that night, I was bringing everything in, and I came in, walked into the kitchen, and I heard a man and a woman talking in my living room, and then a child laugh. And no one else was here. My thought is that, and I know this from different readings I've done in this room, that doll is the matriarch of all of these spirits that are here. Mm-hmm. No one steps out of line. No one gets a chance to talk or anything because she's in charge. I think they were having a party while she was gone. And I think that she may have been next to me because she was pissed that was going on.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
It all sounds Hollywood and hokey. Those are my thoughts.
I'll tell you though, I can fully get behind it because, first of all, I will say I like how you referred to them as enchanted items versus haunted. Because we too have a collection here. We have a case that's over here to my right. And we like to think of these things as just kind of each bringing their own energy to the room. Not necessarily because, we like to go out and do antique stores and just find things that kind of speak to you. They jump out for whatever reason. You don't even have to understand it at the moment. But for whatever reason, this item jumped out to you and wanted to come home with you. And so, we do the same thing. We bring items home and we introduce them to the case and we introduce them to anybody and anything that's here. And we have kind of also felt that we've seen a pecking order, so to speak, within this case. And you've got your jokester, you've got your serious, you've got your skeptic. There's just a bunch of different emotions that go on. And we actually talked about one night we introduced this new doll to the case. And we had this other doll here, and we've come to find that her name is Bella. That's actually our son came to us one day and was so just out of the blue. Like, we're sitting here trying to be like, what's her name? And he's like, oh, Bella? We're like, what do you mean, Bella? He's like, that's her name. It's Bella. And it was just like out of nowhere. It's like, all right, well, that's what came through. But we introduced a new item to the case one night, and she kind of has this expression on her face naturally of almost like deep thinker, like that's like the expression you see. Well, the next day after introducing this new item, I swear to you, without actually changing, it looked as if her facial expression went from being a deep thinker to all of a sudden she was concerned, and she was concerned with the item next to her. Like she was kind of like, it took her a little while to warm up to it, and then now we've seen the facial expression almost relax and go back to that like just accept it. It's just, but it just goes to kind of talk about what you're saying, how they have their own personalities that. So to hear you say that, like, oh, they were probably partying because the warden was out. So
and that's exactly how I feel. I have a rocking horse in here that's haunted. I've got a painting that I found. So last year, my daughter and I were antiquing along the Route 4 Antiques in New Hampshire. Yeah. And the last antique shop we went into, it was a crappy one. We went in, walking around, we walk upstairs into this back room, and I walked through the doorway, and I was like, oh. Like, I just felt it, and I said to her, I said, man, either this place is haunted or there's something in this room. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, damn it, I can't figure out what it is. So I took a picture of the room, posted it later that night, and I had half a dozen people say, it is that painting, it is that painting. I said, and I was like, you think it's the painting? And they're like, yeah. And I said, okay. So I said to my daughter, I said, well, on our way home in a couple of days, we're going to stop by. And I didn't stop thinking about this. Like, I need that painting. Mm-hmm. Need it. Mm-hmm. So sure enough, we went back, we stopped, went in, went upstairs, walked up, felt the same thing as I walked through the room. I grabbed the painting off the wall and just electricity in my arms. I said, this is it. Wow, yeah. Okay. So I took it down. I went downstairs. The old man running the store, I said, want to get this? And he's like, oh, do you know the person? I said, nope. I said, but I was here the other day and I felt a real weird energy. I said, I've got some abilities. And I said, there's something attached to this and I need to take it home. And he goes, okay. And I said, you guys firm on the price? He said, oh, let me get my wife. She comes in and he's like, oh, tell her what you told me. And I was telling her and she goes, all right, well, we'll give it to you for cheaper. I'm glad it's going to a home. And it hangs on the wall and it hasn't had any issues since. But that thing came right out at me. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we almost bought one other thing that day. We went to a different antique shop that I'd been to. Went down in the basement of the antique shop where they had another setup. Walked into the back room, and I didn't say anything to her. But the minute I walked in, I got a splitting headache, and I did not feel well. So I'm like, okay, something is in this room. Mm-hmm. I'm 99% sure it was a little child's rocking chair. Mm-hmm. My daughter walks in behind me. About 30 seconds later, she goes, I don't feel good. I said, what's the matter? Wow. I'm really sick. I said, do me a favor. I said, walk back out in the hall. She goes, why? I said, just do it. She goes out in the hall and she looks at me. She goes, I'm fine. I said, there's something in this room. Because she has abilities too that she doesn't understand yet. Sure. I don't understand. We're just learning. And I couldn't pinpoint what it was. I didn't have room for another rocking chair anyways, but pretty sure it was that rocking chair. So
Wow.
if I'm back up in the area, I'm going to see if it's still there, see if I still get the same
Awesome.
vibes. But
Awesome.
yeah,
And
so
I liked
every once in a while they'll jump out at me.
I liked your idea too of taking the picture of the room and kind of putting it out there and be like, tell me what you think. And again, we've done that with some of our items here where, we're looking for the backstory because, again, we're not picking up items that are necessarily come to you saying, hey, here is Haunted Exhibit A and here's their backstory. It's just, again, there was something about them that made you want them. So we'll do that. We'll put a picture up and just say, what do you guys think? What are you picking up? What are you feeling? So I'd like that idea a lot.
Yeah, definitely. So you were talking about your daughter. So does she do investigations with you, or do you allow her to come on investigations with you?
I sure do. Yep. So she had her terrifying experience. I think she was either 7 or 8, and this was because of another. These items are haunted. They're haunted as hell, and it was a group of paintings that were found in the trash. And one night I came home and they were in my kitchen. It was the first night I'd ever seen them. They were left here by my ex, and she brought them in, and I'm looking, I'm like, wow, those are different, And went to bed that night, and middle of the night I get up to go to the bathroom like I do most nights, and I'm in there, and I see like a marble-sized ball of light doing like the figure 8 loop infinity sign right in front of me. I'm like, it's just a car driving by. There's no windows in the bathroom, so it couldn't have been, but the subconscious mind, everyone when they get up in the middle of the night, they do that one eye barely open. I'm staying asleep, and so I just like, it's nothing. Turn around and go back into the bedroom, and I see it out in the living room doing the same little dance. So I'm like, whatever. Wake up the next morning, and I said to her, hey, how'd you sleep? She goes, I didn't sleep well at all. I said, what do you mean? She goes, a demon came and stood at my bed last night. I said, what are you talking about? She said, I saw it. It was like she has a loft bed. She's like, it was standing right at my ladder. And it was looking at me with black eyes, just staring at me. And I was yelling, and you wouldn't wake up, and I couldn't get your attention, so I just rolled over and hid under the blankets. And I said, I really wish you could have woke me. I'm so sorry. And she said, later on, I looked out towards the bathroom, and I saw it standing in the doorway, and it filled the doorway, its whole shadow, just standing there staring at me. So I told her, I said, I want you to draw exactly what you saw and write out everything you did. So she did. Yep. She drew everything out, and it looked like something from The Grudge, like one of those Ju-on looking, almond-shaped eyes, black eyes, the black hair. Little boy had 10 fingers on each hand. Like, she wrote all kinds of stuff about how it doesn't like the light and it's scared of the light, and all these bizarre things that there's no way that was a dream or sleep paralysis, because that was my first. I was like, she's having a nightmare or something.
Right.
What I think when I get up to go to the bathroom, I saw that thing as light, whereas she could see it as shadow because she's more open.
Right, yeah. Definitely.
And I probably broke it, went back to bed, and then she had her experience. She was terrified, and we got the paintings out of the main. They're in the basement. We actually brought those to Parafest Maine last year, and we talked about her experience. They've only left the house twice for that, and the Hunting the Haunted Paracon. Those are the only times I ever brought them out. I don't like them. I don't like touching them. I don't like interacting with them because I feel off them. And I did a big reveal, a big Facebook thing, and I had half a dozen people trying to figure out the artist, figure out anything on them. No one can figure it out.
Wow.
They're an enigma. You can't read the signature very well. So she had that experience. So that to her was, okay, there's really ghosts out there.
Yeah.
She loves doing anything that I do. So we do a lot of photography and things like that. But I was starting my team at that point in time, and I was like, what better way to start Warner Paranormal than me and her? Because we are the people. So
definitely
brought her on board, and she's done a bunch of investigations. She's done the Oliver House a couple times in Middleborough. She's done the Bradford House in Kingston. We just did a private bar and club in town a couple weeks ago. So I am responsible enough before I get hate mail from people. I don't bring her anywhere I haven't been yet.
Of course.
Because I don't want to inadvertently expose her to something that she's not ready for.
Of course.
I also don't think there's any place out there that I wouldn't bring her.
That was going to be one of my questions.
Yeah. I just don't think there's anything that bad anywhere. I really don't.
Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate that.
I've experienced so many things, but I've never experienced anything where I wouldn't bring a loved one to.
Gotcha.
I want those experiences, don't get me wrong, but it hasn't happened yet. So.
And it's awesome because that really speaks close to home for us. I mean, obviously, that's where we're rooted as well. I mean, we we attack this as a family. It's and like you said, anytime you can find something where you can bond with your kids, and it's not gonna bore you to death because it's not some YouTube channel, and you can really and link and bond over it. I mean, that's we have 3 kids that are all interested in it as well, and even though our older daughter, it's so fun to see the 2 sides of it. You can see like the school side of her where I don't think she knows whether or not it's a cool thing to be into it, so she might kind of keep it private. But yet when we go out on these investigations, she takes the wheel and just goes, and it's almost like we're following her, and also just the different perspective you get when you're investigating with children. I mean, we had a very fortunate experience to go to the orphanage down in Gettysburg with our kids just this past week, and to be able to bring children into a place where you're looking to potentially communicate with spirit children, the interactions that we got and the things that were done that night were incredible, and I give it all because our kids were there being kids and being young investigators, and it made the room feel so much more comfortable, I'm sure. It allowed these entities to really come out and just be in their own element. I mean, what better way to draw kids out than having kids playing old-fashioned games that they would have played as a kid too? So it really just it's an awesome thing to experience with your family. I mean, we saw our first apparition with our children. It's awesome, man. And so we super appreciate hearing that you really take the time to do it with her and do it, like you said, responsibly. That's a big thing too. And we always put up the disclaimer too, like, we know to be careful, because again, you start getting people that are like, oh my God, how could you ever bring a child out there? And it's like, well, because we talk, we're open. These kids this isn't new to them. I mean, this is dinner time conversation every night. So
far too many people are so closed off to it as if it's this bad thing. And it's like, I'd support her if she wanted to do cheerleading, softball, soccer, any of it. And she happens to like this. She doesn't like anything else.
Yeah, awesome.
And she's the same thing. She's not going to school wearing her crystals and painting her fingers black, but
yeah.
she'll do all that stuff with me. But she
exactly.
doesn't talk about it at school because kids will look at her like she's weird.
Yeah. You got to respect that, that boundary form. So.
Of course. Yeah.
We had gotten some keychains made up, and we asked her, like, oh, do you want one for your backpack for school? She's like, no. Like, come on, what do you mean? She's like, no. But again, you put her out in the field and you put a recorder in her hand, or she just goes with it, and it's awesome. And we brought her on our group investigation at Parsons Field, and she was leading a group of like 20 people. It was great to see kids in their element and really really enjoying that. So
it can be done safely, and there's no reason for it. It is. A lot of people dislike it, and I don't get why.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I feel like this is the future of the paranormal field, so
exactly.
like let's shape them correctly,
right.
Right. So
instead of letting TV do it.
Well, exactly, because they're gonna have questions, and that kind of goes back to where we opened up, was when I was asking you about how your family kind of dealt with it with you, because that's important. I came from a family where it wasn't negative. It wasn't like they looked down upon it, but it was just, that's just a dream. That's not real. That's just in movies, and so you have to go out and find answers on your own, and then you might look the wrong way. You might, or you might become too involved and not know where to set your own boundaries. So I just think it's important if they're showing that interest and they're into it. I mean, I would never push anybody, but if they're going to give just their own interest in it, then absolutely. I mean, that's your job as a parent to guide them anyway.
Absolutely.
So I did want to bring up, going back to your bio and what you talked about and where you're from. So you're down in the Bridgewater Triangle area, and I've got to say that is by far, I mean, we've had a chance to go down and investigate down at the Hockomock Swamp, down at the, remember the rock there?
Adawan Rock.
Adawan Rock, I believe, yeah. Yep. So and being down in the Hockomock Swamp, I mean, we had some of our greatest experiences there. And so what is the Bridgewater Triangle to you? I mean, I know there's, I've talked to different people about the idea of the triangles and what is it that makes these triangular areas, so to speak, or why does a triangle become so important in these big areas? But just what is it that you feel makes the Bridgewater Triangle area what it is?
If I had to put something to it, I think it would go back to the Native American population there.
Yep.
Whatever is going on within the triangle, I would directly link to them. And whatever spiritual rituals and things that they used to do, because I mean, if you guys know, I'm sure you've heard of at least the puckwudgies and things like that.
Yeah.
They manifested those and created those spiritually to help them out. Mm-hmm. So knowing that they can do that, why couldn't they have supercharged and magnetized an area of spiritually, magnificent things?
Right.
Very possible.
Right, which almost becomes a beacon then for any of all activity. I mean, when you're talking the Bridgewater Triangle, you're talking paranormal, you're talking cryptid, you're talking UFO. I mean, it's like it's just the hub spot of anything related to activity. So.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, I've had a lot of experiences within the triangle. Like my hometown, Abington, is the tip of the triangle.
Yep.
And then the southeast is the Freetown Forest. Southwest is Rehoboth. I've done a lot of investigating out in the Freetown Forest at night. Any forest at night is creepy, but that one's extra creepy because you know exactly what happened out there.
Yeah.
So that adds to it. I've done the Hockomock Swamp at night. The Oliver House is close. It's in Middleborough, so it's, the lines have blurred a little bit. I've had numerous experiences at the Oliver House, especially in the woods, and especially with puckwudgies.
Yes.
I've had a lot of puckwudgie experiences. I've never seen one full on, but I've had one follow me.
I almost feel like that's the point. That's when almost you're dealing with one, is because you're getting all these experiences and you can't pinpoint it.
Yep. The last time I was at Oliver House was last fall. It was last October. My friend Kenna was up from Atlanta. Her and I got the house. And we're out in the woods. And the backwoods there is just hotbed of activity. That's my favorite spot to go now.
Yeah.
And we're out there. And when you get to a certain point, you can tell you're being watched and you're not wanted. It's an uncanny feeling. And we got to that point, and at that point, you're about a half a mile walk back. So you got to walk back through the dark the way you just came.
Right.
And we're walking back, and we're hearing things on either side. And a lot of lore with the puckwudgies is that they will try to distract you, separate you, trip you, push you over cliffs, those types of things. And we're getting distractions, and all of a sudden, things start coming down from the trees, like big-ass acorns. And there was no wind or anything. And they weren't coming. They weren't just falling. It was like they were being thrown at us. And we're like, what is going on? And we're recording all this. We're Facebook Live, I think. And I'm like, what is going on? And we get a little further up, and we heard some rustling off to the side, and we look, and we can't see it, but we can see something bipedal, about 2.5 feet tall, running through the brush, all the brush separating as it goes. It goes in about 20 feet, and the movement of it, you can see it look back at us, and we're like, what the Christ was that? Because you couldn't make out what it was, but you know it was this little two-legged figure creature thing making the little scrub brush pines move to the side as it went through them.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I've never seen anything like this before. And we both saw it. We're looking at each other like, okay. And we got out of there because we felt it following us.
Yeah.
And what's really cool too, that area, because we actually were lucky, we were just back there in March. And that area that I feel like you're talking about, one thing I noticed as well is when we were walking out there, you can hear like the road, you can hear all the noise pollution around you, but then all of a sudden you cross this like threshold where everything becomes silent. And it's like you are in such a vast depth of an area. Like you went from being on the side of the road to being out in the middle of nowhere, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
And then
when you walk through the break in the farm wall, that's when everything changes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, and actually that's what Christy even said when we were walking out there, and she's like, this is where things start to kind of change. And no, I definitely, we weren't able to get out there like later that night because it got so cold so fast, but I definitely want to get out and investigate the woods at the Oliver House. It's such a beautiful location, and and going back to talking about just about puckwudgies, again over at the Hockomock Swamp, I feel like that was for me the first time I had encountered what potentially could have been a puckwudgie kind of experience, because it was that feeling of being followed, and it was you would stop and you knew it was right there. You knew it was right behind you. And as soon as you turn and look, it's like, oh, it just ducked off to the side, can't see me. And then the second you start walking again, and it was just playing these tricks, and it gets frustrating because you're just like, I know it's there. I know there's something behind me, but I always catch it at the last second. It just darts out of vision, or just, and I feel like that's what we were dealing with there. That, and then some of the kind of the ominous lights we were seeing out there, these kind of green, glowy, almost look like water lights in the sky. Swamp gas almost is what it kind of looked like.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very unique experience, but it can be frustrating too. Like you said, they kind of just mislead you
because you want to be able to prove it, but you're most likely never going to be able to.
Oh.
Yeah, no, definitely not. So I have to say, you have investigated so many awesome, amazing places, and I'm so jealous of the list But the one place that sticks out the most is the Whaley House. And I feel like that you don't hear so much about the Whaley House anymore. Like, I feel like it's kind of like on the back burner. Like, as a child, like you, growing up, like on Unsolved Mysteries, watching sightings, like we heard about the Whaley House. Like, that was like a notorious haunted house. So I have to ask you, like, how amazing was it?
So I had one of my very first spirit interactions in that house.
Really?
Same as you just said, I remembered that show, all the shows that had the Whaley House.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing, it's like, why don't people talk about it more? Because you hear all about, like, this house. And I was out in San Diego for the first time I was out there for a wedding. And I said to my ex, I said, hey, I gotta see the Whaley House.
Mm-hmm.
And she was into the ghost stuff too, so she said, yeah, we'll go to the Whaley House. And it was like $10, tour yourself around, self-guided tour. And they had a few people in the house, period authentic clothing, telling you about the location.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nobody there. There's like one other person and then a couple people working, and we're walking around, and we go upstairs, and in all the rooms they had, like, you could walk in the doorway, and they had it like a little balcony, so you could walk in but not all the way in, so you didn't mess with the room.
Yeah.
And I saw there was an older woman that was working there, so I said, all right, this would be the lady. So she was talking to a tourist, and then he left, and I said, all right, I just want to know ghost stuff. I said, I don't need to know about the judge on it. I said, what's going on? And she said, well, there's a portal in this house, and it's not far from where you're standing, and it goes from here all the way down into the basement. I said, okay, all right. So I'm standing about 8 feet from this woman with my back to a room. My ex is about 2 feet over here, and I've got my arms down by my side, and she's talking. And in this hand, I feel this. The time my daughter was really little, and I know the feeling of a child taking your hand and pulling you to go play.
Sure.
And it was that feeling. And I looked down, and I'm like, and my ex's hand was nowhere near me. And the lady goes, something just happened to you? I said, yeah, my hand was just grabbed and tugged. And she goes, are you serious? I said, yeah. She's like, that's only happened one other time here.
Wow.
The room behind me was a kid's room, full of toys. And
Come on, let's go play.
that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And I think ever since I'm an immature child at heart anyways. I've never grown up. Now that I have a child, I've had more interactions with spirit children than anything else, because I think they sense that on me.
Absolutely.
But, this dude's safe. He's going to be fine. And that was like, this is the best $10 I've ever spent. It was just so intense to feel that actual connection.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'm there with people that don't believe in ghosts, and they're like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, I don't care about you. But that was one of those experiences I'm never going to forget. And that's a place that everyone should check out.
Yeah, definitely. That's been on my bucket list forever. One day I'll make it out there, but the Whaley House, it's just so much history, so much like a long history, and so much like a long history of like haunts too. So definitely would love to get out there sometime. So I have to say, I've watched some of your Facebook Lives that you do. I'm not sure if it's Wednesday nights that you do them or whichever nights you do them, but I have to say that I love that you say what you mean, like, and you just put it out there, like, and I love and I respect that you bring these different topics out there, like what you would want to change about the paranormal field and what's going on in this field. And I just have to say, like, thank you for like putting these out there and just kind of just putting yourself out there and voicing your opinion about it, because I feel like it kind of almost makes me like, hey, yeah, I have opinions and ideas that I feel like need to change in this field, and I just have to thank you for, you know, kind of being that voice. Like,
I appreciate that, and I get a lot of private messages, and people are like, oh, I'm so glad somebody said it, and because a lot of people, I think they're worried that they're gonna, you know, hinder some chance that they have down the road at something.
Right.
I just don't care. I figure if I want to do something, I'm going to do it anyways, and I'm going to get there one way or another. And if I was like 2% meaner, I'd actually name people, but I don't want to get to that level, because there's a lot of people that need to be called out. But I feel like the old saying, the trash takes itself out. Eventually, it does.
Yes.
But I will always voice my opinion, albeit unpopular. Come to find out, it isn't always as unpopular as I think. It's just that. And I am trying to be that. I'm trying to be the voice for everyone that wants something said that doesn't want to say it themselves.
Definitely.
And I have no problem being that person.
Awesome.
Well,
No, we appreciate that, and again, kind of the whole idea behind us wanting to start this podcast and start some of the live stuff that we've done is to do just that, is to give people voices that maybe by other means may not have had them, or even if they have their own, just giving them another platform or another option to be able to kind of get their views and opinions out. So, and I think it's huge. It goes so far to the paranormal, the unity, the family, it's in every other aspect of the world. If somebody needs to be called out, or if a situation needs to be called out, you do it. And I don't think it should be any different for this field. And
Right.
I think it's important to hold people to be true and to be respectful and just to not always buy into, seeing is not always believing, in the sense of just because you saw someone do it on TV or you saw, there's other things involved here, and they need to be brought forward.
Absolutely.
Definitely. So, and just to kind of wrap up with you, Matt, and talking about your Facebook Lives and whatnot, so where are some places where if people wanted to go and check you out, check out some of maybe your collection or some of these events that you're talking about, where can they find you at?
So my main hub is Facebook, One of Paranormal Explorers. It's One of Paranormal Explorers on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube as well. The YouTube is very underwhelming. Don't expect greatness there, but there's stuff there. I have a Patreon where I've been doing most of my live investigations through, or special parts of the investigations for folks there.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a ton of events coming up this year. I'm going to be out in Detroit July 31st for an event at the 6th Precinct. I'm going to be in Savannah in September for the Haunted Savannah Paracon.
Awesome.
I'm going to be in Arizona in October for the Vulture City Paracon. November I'll be at Witch City Salem Paracon. And I know I got a bunch of other things that haven't been announced yet that I can't talk about just yet.
Sure.
Yeah,
Awesome.
But I'm going to be all over the country. I'm finally getting out west this year, and I'm excited because I'm going to get to meet a lot of people for the first time and bring my brand of nonsense further out west.
Making your way out to Tombstone at all?
I'm hoping to. Yeah, I'm bringing my daughter. We were supposed to do a trip last year to the Grand Canyon, and then, COVID.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm bringing her to this, and we're going to build it around. I want to go to Jerome, which is a known ghost town out there, Grand Canyon, Tombstone, and all that good stuff in Vulture City, if we can cram it in. But yeah, it's going to be a spooky trip.
That's awesome. That's so exciting. Well, best of luck with that.
Yes.
I'm so excited, and I can't wait to follow you on your journey. Curiously live through Facebook.
Live through you on those.
Yeah. We got to do something together soon too.
Definitely,
Yeah,
man.
definitely.
We
It
would
would
love
be.
to.
It would be awesome.
We'll get together after this and look to put some stuff together, because it's all about expanding and again, meeting new people and learning new ideas. And I definitely feel that we would get all that experience getting together with you and doing some of this. So.
I agree. We're
Awesome,
very
man.
like-minded.
Awesome, Matt. Well, Matt, we appreciate you so much for coming and hanging out with us. And, please just feel free to keep in contact, and we'll do the same. And, again, just thank you for hopping on and spending some time with us tonight.
Appreciate you guys having me on.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you again, Matt.
Thank you. And thank you guys for tuning in and listening to this month's episode. And we will see you again 1 month from now. You guys stay safe out there.
Right. Bye.